She could have stayed quiet. She has every reason to protect her privacy, stay out of the spotlight, and let someone else carry the fight. She chose to go to Washington instead. Today, we are talking about endometriosis, a chronic disease affecting an estimated 10% of women worldwide, and the women who have decided that awareness alone was not enough. She wanted action. Today, I'm truly honored to welcome Alexis Roderick Joel to the show. Alexis is a women's health advocate, a co-chair of the Joel Foundation with her husband, Billy Joel, and the recently named chair of advocacy and strategic partnerships for the Endometriosis Foundation of America. She has moderated panels at the National Conference on the Women's Health in Washington, D.C., connected with legislators on Capitol Hill, and committed herself to pushing for the research funding and policy change that millions of women desperately need. And she does all of this because she lives with endometriosis herself. Alexis, thank you so much for being on the show today. I am honored to have you here.
Thank you so much. You understand the battles that we go through, right? And you can either have your pity party or you have to get up and do something. So, thank you for the intro, but I know that you understand and we're one and the same when it comes to that. So, I
For
appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And let's make something really good happen today because I'm really excited about our conversation. Now, Alexis, I always wanted to start with the human story because I believe that's where the real conversation happens. But for so many women, endometriosis is not diagnosed right away. There's often years of pain, confusion, and feeling completely dismissed before they finally get answers. Can you take us back to your own experience? Like, what were the signs that something was wrong?
Well, I feel like I'm an outlier when it comes to this. So, typically, the symptoms that most girls will have are different. So, mine ended up coming on later after the birth of my second child. And that was really when I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what, but my symptoms also weren't textbook. So, I didn't have the heavy periods with like chronic pain where or debilitating pain where you're in a ball on the floor. I really had later onset symptoms, which I probably had it. It just was not bothering me. And whatever happened with poor little Remy, I blame her for this. But, that pregnancy just kind of threw me into a tailspin and the pain became unbearable. And it was cyclical, which is, the number one sign that you'll typically have this either once a month or twice a month when
Mhm.
hormones are flaring or dropping and the pain is a nerve-based pain. So it will end up giving you those symptoms, whether it's inflammatory and bowel symptoms, bladder symptoms, typical period symptoms. That was kind of when everything started, and it just didn't stop. I ended up eventually having 3 surgeries now, but
Mm.
I don't look at that as a bad thing because the amount of pain I was in, I just could not have existed and doing what I was trying to do in my life with that much pain. So I'm so grateful that I've had 3 surgeries because I feel so much better.
Right.
And it's just hard. I wish everyone was able to have access and understanding and not a delay in diagnosis, but unfortunately that's where we're at. So, that was when I just figured I needed to do something. And my surgeon, the one that did my last 2 surgeries, is the one that started the Endometriosis Foundation of America. So I wanted to help, as most of
Mhm.
us do. We have a
Yeah.
really big community in endo, and people do wanna help because they know they've really been through the ringer by the time they get a diagnosis and they
Yeah.
have surgery or if they have surgery. So, I think that's really where it began for me.
I love that. It sometimes, I always believe that sometimes everything happens for a reason. We may ask, why I don't get it. I don't get why this has to happen to me. But, even in my own experience in life, I feel like I wouldn't be where I am today and I wouldn't be helping the people I help if I didn't go through the experiences in life that I went through just like you. So in a sense where I think people sometimes look at the worst of how can we take that negative and turn it into a positive and help others through what we've gone through. Now, did you feel heard early on or did you have to fight for answers?
I had to fight just like everybody else. Unfortunately, a lot of times your pain is dismissed
Mhm.
and there's kind of an underbelly of endo that, you know, the girls will end up hooked on pain meds. Endo carries a higher rate of depression and anxiety anyway.
Yeah.
And the pain you're being told is normal, or the doctor doesn't understand what it is, and they will just give you pain meds. I received medication for illnesses that I didn't even have that,
Right.
you know, when in doubt, call it IBS or, acid reflux or something else. And I got bladder medication and I didn't have any of those things. I had endo and I went
Yeah.
through MRIs and CAT scans and tests and doctors. I mean, my list of doctors that I saw, starting years ago, even before that pregnancy, when I think back, I got a diagnosis of PCOS, but it's an on the fly diagnosis from a sonogram. And
Right.
no one really explained what that means, what that is telling me about how my body's functioning and my endocrine system and inflammation and inflammatory diseases and all of those things. So trying to figure this all out yourself, now is so much easier
Mhm.
with all the tools at our disposal. But even 5 years ago, it wasn't like that. Even 3 years ago, it wasn't like that. You're weeding through articles. And thank God for AI, because I think that it's going to really help people get answers
Yeah.
and weed out a lot of this because there's a lot of human error when it comes to this disease. So
Yes.
education's a big component, research is a big component. Getting coverage for the right kind of surgery is really important. And
Yes.
awareness. So we were kind of trying to cover all of it right now, but we're small. It's a smaller foundation. It shouldn't be. It should be larger, and we should be scaling across the US and doing all of that. But we're working tirelessly. So we've been in DC, we've been everywhere, as you were talking about.
Well, you know what? That hard work pays off at the end. I'm telling you, it really does. It really does. And nothing happens overnight. It takes time, but through awareness and through others, sympathizing, it could be they realize that, hey, I went through, not that, but I went through this, this, and this. And I get what that person is talking about. And I want to help, and then before you know it, it starts to really excel and we get where we now. What was the hardest part emotionally before you understood what was actually happening to your body?
Well, early on, now looking back to my younger years, I did have heavier periods, was heavier. I just couldn't lose weight. It wasn't until, your 20s when you're really more focused on what that means. Back then, no one really focused in high school on nutrition or anything like that. So as time went on, I was like, wait a second, I don't function like everyone else. Like they can eat what I'm eating and not gain weight and I look like this or I'm and was more
Yeah.
lethargic or having my period would cause like throbbing pain down my legs. And
Mhm.
that's not normal, but
Right.
all these issues and having the diagnosis of PCOS, having endo but not knowing it, and having difficulties getting pregnant. Like I didn't understand what all of that meant. No one tested my estrogen, no one tested my FSH. That wasn't even a
Yes.
you go to your general practitioner in your 20s for a cold or a sinus infection, if you're
Right.
lucky, and hopefully you're not dealing with all of this. But I think changing that mindset now in this day and age is really important because luckily I've met some really smart people and picking their brains has been enlightening because I think for girls, whether you want to get pregnant or not get pregnant, understanding your hormones and the way that your body is functioning is going to help you with longevity. We're knowing that now, right? Like everyone said, don't take estrogen during menopause. And now everyone's like, hold on, wait a second, take estrogen. You're going to live 5 years longer and you're going to
Mhm.
fight off the Alzheimer's. Like, great. But the understanding of women's health in particular, I'm sure is atrocious. And the research, while a lot of the research was done historically with men, it wasn't done with women. So now understanding how hormones affect everything, your joints, your bones, your body, everything. I think that it's something that you should look into more in your 20s and
Mm.
talking to a lot of these people, including the fertility experts. The thought, not that they would say this, but as I pick their brain, like how we were doing, having these conversations, like how does someone know? How would they end up getting their FSH tested unless they know? And the doctors, okay, would a GYN know how to do this? And the one fertility doctor was like, some do, some don't. Some
Mhm.
actually know how to run a hormonal panel, some don't really know how to do it. or they do it
Right.
until you're fine and they don't really know what they're reading. So it's like, well, how as a patient, how are you supposed to understand which one knows and which one doesn't know and what that means
Exactly.
for you, and where do I go from there? Because if a doctor's telling you you're fine, you may not be. The
Right.
good news is, with the increase in fertility coverage now for a lot of people, especially larger companies are taking it on. And having that testing done by a fertility expert in your 20s is really important, whether you want to have kids or not, just to give
Mhm.
you a baseline on your hormonal levels to see where you stand. I
Yeah.
think that she was telling me, she's like, your GYN should really be kind of your most important doctor in your 20s, because
Mhm.
if anything comes from that, I can help you. When we're
Right.
talking about is and you're talking about your clock is ticking and now you want to get pregnant and you had a problem and now you're seeing me, that's where we run into issues. And it's difficult because it may be a 2-year plan to get you to the point of being able to get pregnant.
Right.
So I think that that part of the education will help also because it'll identify some other underlying issues at that time. While it may not give you a definitive endo diagnosis, it can at least help with other hormonal fluctuations that can be tied, or your ovarian reserve being possibly diminished and the
Yeah.
quality being bad. And maybe that's due to endo, maybe it's not, but at least you'll have some warning signs of things that may be going on.
Exactly, exactly. And one thing I think was really important that you brought up is that when you do the blood work and you're looking at the hormones, hormones are so important. Just estrogen alone, like it takes care of over 400 things in our body. Our whole body is run by hormones. And different doctors will read the blood work differently. So if you go to a specialist, they're going to look at the markers differently than a primary doctor would. And so it's really important when you're doing, these tests, to make sure you have the right doctor looking at your blood work and giving you the right answers because different doctors, they're just not equipped
Mhm.
for specific diagnoses and conditions. And those are the doctors that shouldn't try to diagnose, but maybe send you to somebody that knows exactly how to read the blood work and how to what test to give you and how to gear you in the right direction.
Yeah, and, endo now, along with PCOS and fibroids and all these things end up cohabitating. But, they're looking at it as a full body inflammatory disease. So
Mm,
it's a condition that you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life, surgery or no surgery. The
right.
problem exists. And even with the surgery, I was lucky, I feel great. But a lot of people don't. They'll still have pain. And, they hope over time, like your nerves have memory. So
Hmm.
even they remove the thing that was causing the pain, it doesn't mean that the pain goes away because your nerves are just in a protective mode.
Yeah.
And I still have it. Like I will still have bladder pain, even though I know there is nothing there, or
Yeah.
it could be something really microscopic, but I still have it. I have it twice a month, and I know that it's due to inflammation. I know it's like my uterus is inflamed. They share the
Yep.
same nerve pathways, and I know that my bladder reacts to it. It's just what happens. Like I've done
Mhm.
everything I can do, so I now ignore it, and the pain isn't anywhere as bad as it used to be. But
Right.
just having that understanding
Yeah.
helps. I went to so many urologists who told me there was nothing wrong, but
Yeah.
their tests don't look at endo,
Mm,
and MRIs don't see endo and CAT scans don't see endo. So it's difficult to get answers.
yeah. No, it's definitely very difficult to get answers. Now, and for the women listening right now who may be silently going through something similar, what part of your story do you think they will most recognize in themselves?
It's really the time to diagnosis. Whenever I talk about something or we post something online, it's just everyone has their stories and they all sound the same. It's really sad, actually. And everyone will comment that, I had the same thing. My doctor told me it was this, and I had to go to 10 specialists before I could find one doctor that would finally listen to me and tell me I wasn't crazy. But the thing about endo, because it's so understudied, it's very difficult to get a definitive diagnosis. You have to go for surgery. So, in
Mhm.
order to take that leap, you must be pretty desperate.
Yeah.
And because who wants to go for a surgery that you don't even know if you need in order to get a diagnosis for something that you may or may not have? It's like that just,
Yeah.
you I saw a girl, I did this event, a week ago and I saw this girl and she's in excruciating pain. And she's
Uh,
like, I just want to go for the surgery. And I get it. You'll go to, at that point, I'm like, I will sit in surgery for 4 days straight. Just get it out of me because you're in so much pain. You can't live. But,
right.
her parents are like, yeah, but we don't even know if she has it. And, she wants to do this surgery. And I'm like, okay, she doesn't want to do the surgery, first of all. Like, your daughter's desperate, and that's easy for you because you're not
Mhm.
suffering with this right now, and but it's hard. It's hard for people to realize you have to
Yeah,
commit to that level to get a diagnosis.
right. Exactly.
So
Exactly. And
yeah, everyone's heard. Everyone, unfortunately, that is kind of everyone's story. So I
yeah,
know that they're relating to that.
it's amazing because, like, at that point, like you said, I think so many people get so desperate, it's just like, "Go ahead. Do the surgery, do this, do that, because you just wanna feel better, because having to deal with pain every single day that you wake up is just not a life nobody wants to live, and it can get very frustrating, and it can be very depressing also. Definitely,
It does. It
definitely.
ruins marriages, relationships, having kids and dealing with this is like impossible. There are days you wake up and you're on the floor, and then there are days where you feel okay and you can't really figure it out. You can't plan. You don't know how you're going to feel. It
Yeah,
was rough. I mean, I haven't been in that much pain in a long time, and the good thing is you do forget over time how bad it was. It's like
yeah.
pregnancy. You're like, God, I'm never going to do that again. But we're 9 months and you're like, okay. But as time goes on, your memories fade of how bad it was. Keeping me in touch with all these people, obviously, I now
Yeah,
recall it, but you do forget, like, planning anything is so hard, and the level of exhaustion. I just remember,
yeah,
like, having to crawl into bed because your body is just in this fighting state all the
yeah.
time, trying to rid you of this inflammatory thing that is growing like cancer all over your body. So,
Mhm.
it's difficult. You don't feel good on many levels.
Yeah, definitely. Now, a lot of people have heard the word endometriosis, but generally do not understand like what it is. Can you explain it simply for someone hearing about it for the very first time?
Yes. Is your basically the cells inside of your uterus
Hmm.
break free and end up traveling throughout mostly your abdominal cavity. So when they break free, they implant somewhere. So think of it kind of like how cancer is, right? If it's
Yeah.
metastasizing, the cells break free, they land somewhere, and then they start to grow. And that's basically what
Hmm.
happens. But because it's your uterus and it's the lining, that's also the part every month that bleeds. So that same process is happening no matter where it lands. So when you
Right.
have those hormonal fluctuations that cause you to get your period, well, your uterus is also in small sections bleeding on the inside of your body wherever that tissue landed. So
Right.
it affects nerves. It grows with roots just the way that cancer does, and they excise it the way that they remove cancer, with clean margins, and they want to take it out by its root. And it shares a lot of the same properties.
It's so hard for women when you have to go through that on a daily basis. It's just, I tell people do something about it because there's so many people I know that have problems, female problems, and they just deal with it. And it's like, why? Why not reach out and get help? Don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed to talk about it. Just go and get help. There's no reason why you have to wake up every morning and feel like that. If there is a solution out there, you should be hunting for it.
Mhm. Yeah, and you really have to be an advocate in this day and age. I mean, I tell everyone, like, healthcare's awful right now. It's awful. And I'm
Yeah.
a doctor snob. I don't wanna just deal with anyone. I'm like, "Who is the best person for whatever I have?" And, like, that's where I need to go. And
Mhm.
because it's the standard of care is awful when you or really the difference in the standard of care is awful when you can find a doctor at a teaching institution or in a major city. And, I'm lucky I have the ability to do that. I realize that everyone doesn't. But
Mhm.
if you can, you need to fight for yourself, and that's where you need to be because that person has an understanding that what
Right.
they saw or read yesterday or 2 months ago or 2 years ago may not be the
Mhm.
case today, and they're open to it. When you go
Exactly.
to these other places where they're not in that kind of setting, it's just a different mindset, and they're
Yeah.
not exposed to certain things, and a doctor is not just a doctor no matter where they are. It's a huge
Yeah.
difference. So,
Definitely.
unfortunately, you have to fight for yourself, but I think that we have a lot of knowledge at our fingertips now, so I do think that that's gonna help.
I definitely agree with you. Now,
Mhm.
why is disease so consistently misunderstood by others?
because it will pop up as different things. So, if you're kind of textbook and you're a teenager and you have bad periods and you can't get out of bed or you're bleeding more than normal, obviously those are big warning signs, right? I mean, we still need to do education because school nurses still don't understand it. They still don't
Yeah,
teach it in health class. Gym teachers don't understand it. But you remember those girls that would be like, I have my period, I have to go to the nurse. And they go, or they'd sit out in gym or something, but didn't understand that that's a problem. Or the ones
yeah,
that stayed home from school because of that. Like Midol came
right.
out and everyone just took Midol. Like they were like, here you go. But
Mhm.
it's not normal. It's not normal that some girls have that level of pain and some girls don't. But, once you leave those symptoms and this
Uh-huh.
becomes infiltrating, because if you have the type of endo that travels and goes all over and becomes deep infiltrating, you will
Yeah,
have pop up everywhere. I had my appendix removed. I had lesions on my intestines. It was all over
wow,
my abdominal cavity. It was, on my uterine sacral ligament, on my ovaries, like, everywhere. So the pain is no longer period pain. It's your stomach is in excruciating pain. My stomach was distended. I gained, like, 15 pounds in 3 months,
wow.
and I just couldn't like, it just hurt. It just felt like that part, when I was, like, early pregnancy and your body doesn't wanna stretch that way, and you're just being stretched that way, and it's difficult because I ended up, as most people do, at, a gastro doctor, and I ended up with endocrine, I ended up with urologist and, the whole gamut, like, I ran the whole thing, and everyone gives you whatever's in their little box of
Exactly.
they think your problem is. So, it's difficult to find someone that hears you say all those different organs or
Yep.
problem areas and can actually give you a diagnosis.
Yes, 100%, 100%. Now, why is it so important for people to understand that it is not just bad cramps, that it is real serious chronic disease? Because, I remember, back in the day, I used to get those cramps so bad around menstruation and I wouldn't go to school and the doctor would give me special medication and I just, for me, they were like, "Oh yeah, that's normal, here, take this." And I would take this and my mother would let me stay home from school and you would think it was normal, And of course, when you have kids, if your kid goes through the same thing, you're going to think it's normal too because you went through the same thing.
I think having that level of pain and an understanding that that level of pain is not normal and you need to go to a doctor because there's
Yeah.
something else going on. And I hate to tell you, but that's not normal. So I'm sorry you went through that. But now in hindsight,
Yeah.
not. That is not something that should be dealt with at that level. That should be you going to get answers. But
100%.
again, we're doing education with the schools, but it's hard. They don't teach it in health class.
Yeah.
And getting anything into the school system education wise is an uphill battle. There's teachers unions and there's a lot of different moving parts to that equation. Also, the
Yes.
teaching in medical school, like what we're finding is the doctors have like one paragraph on this. That's it. And
Exactly.
this is something that's the leading cause of infertility. And we have tons of medications for infertility. We have
Yeah.
specialists in clinic, we have insurance for it, we have all this, but no one's treating the underlying cause. That doesn't make sense to me. But again, now you're up against pharma and you're
Mhm.
up against big business, so
Right.
it's hard because that is the reality.
Yeah. That is reality.
Mhm.
I didn't realize that endo was one of the main causes of infertility is because of that.
Yep.
That was something I was not aware of.
Yeah, and the numbers are reported far less than what they really think that they are
Wow.
because we don't know. We haven't done the research,
Yeah.
so right now we're playing catch up with all of it. But when
Mhm.
you speak to the doctors that actually do these surgeries and are the specialists and see these patients, they'll swear it's more like 70, 80%.
Now, why do you think women are so conditioned to minimize their own pain?
Well, I mean, do you really wanna get the minute we're 5? I don't know, it's like, "You're a girl, he's gonna treat you like garbage, and that means he likes you," It's like, "Don't cry. If you cry, you're like a girl." I mean, my god,
Mhm.
it's like built in us from the time we're little.
Yeah.
So, and then it's your lot in life, you have your period, but you get to have babies, and you're supposed to be a mother even though you're exhausted, and the baby cries for 8 hours every night and you haven't slept. You can't make one mistake when it comes to that. It's like it's all these
Yeah.
things just coming at you that these expectations are just unrealistic. You're gonna
Right.
cry when you see your baby and feel immediately bonded. And I remember my first one came out and she had like black hair. And I was like, and then you feel bad because I'm like, I don't feel like what I'm supposed to feel like. This is like what
Yeah.
just happened. Like this baby has
Mhm.
black hair. Like I just wasn't I had some vision in
Yeah.
my mind. It was gonna be different,
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, it starts early on and I mean it just continues. But education hopefully will change that.
Yeah, it definitely will. I think the more we do research, the more we look into these things, the more we bring awareness to society, the more things will start to change, and the better awareness, the more people will say, okay, I have these symptoms. Maybe it's just not in my head. Maybe I need to, go and see, a doctor who specializes in this, and a doctor, and look for specific things instead of just being, totally in the clouds and not knowing. Now, what do you most wish doctors, families, partners understood about women with endometriosis that they're actually going through?
Think if there was one thing that all doctors could just understand is if women are coming to you with pain, regardless of where it is, if it's
Mhm.
sick and it's not constant and it's coming once a month, twice a month, chances are that's endo.
Yeah.
So anything that's tied to hormones like that that's causing pain is some
Mhm.
kind of inflammatory process that's being triggered once or twice a month, whether it's a rise or a fall. And having
Right.
that understanding would help weed out because most of the women that have endo end up at gastroenterologists and, urologists. So understanding that and having that in their wheelhouse would be really helpful. Um,
Yeah.
their education's very lacking. We know it. So it's difficult, but I think that that would be really important.
I agree with you. Now, this part of the conversation, I think so many women are going to connect with most deeply. There are women listening right now who know something is wrong in their bodies and they have been told that they are overreacting, that they are anxious, that is stress, that it's not, it's just part of being a woman. Why do you think women's pain is still being dismissed in 2026?
I think it's hard with endo. I think they haven't pinpointed a gene. They haven't pinpointed exactly how to see it. And
Yeah.
a lot of times when that happens and it's not contained in one area with one specialist, it's very hard to realize that this is a real thing.
Yeah.
Women not. It's a very difficult diagnosis to get. And it means that you're crossing over specialists. And the specialists, that what happened to me was every time I would go to someone, it's almost like they were happy to just be like, not me, and push you off to someone else. So
Yeah.
having someone be able to connect that is very difficult. And unless you go to a specialist who only treats endo or specializes in treating endo, they're just not going to look at it the same way. I think that there's like you're a woman, you're going to be gaslit. They're going to tell you having a period's terrible. And if it's, I had women GYNs too tell me, like, you don't look like you have PCOS. I don't even know what that means, but like there's also this whole part of women with PCOS that are like thin and narrow, and that's a whole other type of PCOS. But
Yeah.
having someone that really knows what they're doing and not everyone does, like understanding that GYNs don't have training in this unless they've
No.
searched it,
Mm.
out for themselves, they don't have it. So
Yeah.
really talking to someone that knows what they're doing, I think will weed out a lot of problems.
Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you. There are many times I went to a GYN and I had similar, symptoms. They just like brushed it off and they were like, well, maybe we'll put you on birth control. And I'm like looking at them, I'm 53. I'm like, huh? Or the only thing I could think of is a partial hysterectomy or a hysterectomy.
Mhm.
And then you're looking at them like, yeah, I want to go into postmenopause. Really? Do you really think that's going to solve it? And I hear that from a lot of women. A lot of women go to their GYN, they're expecting to get the right advice and they get thrown off, completely into a different direction that they should be in. So what does that do to a woman emotionally when she keeps asking for help and she keeps getting, they just brush her off and they don't believe her?
It's exhausting. I mean, my time to diagnosis was less, I think, because mine started later. But having a 10-year delay in diagnosis, you're exhausted and you're beaten down. And at that point, if you're still fighting to get a diagnosis, I mean, more power to you. But a lot of people give up. because
Yeah.
they just don't think that what they have is real or that they're ever gonna get it, or they just do the hysterectomy or a partial hysterectomy, and they just deal with whatever that is because 'cause they're desperate, and they'll do
Yeah.
anything at that point, and it doesn't actually solve it either.
No.
So, that's the other part, like, but they don't understand that. So, yeah, they don't feel better because you still have the problem, and if your hormones are fluctuating or your ovaries are there and you're still getting that hormonal fluctuation, like, you're still gonna be in pain every month, and if
Exactly.
someone removes it the right way and goes in, it's not gonna get any better, and, you know, when I do post things and see some of the comments, I mean, so many people are do say this has actually come a long way because, I was given a hysterectomy at 39 and could never have kids, and no one even talked to me about it. So, it's really daunting, it's exhausting, it's pathetic in the year 2026 that we're still dealing with this at such a
Mhm.
minuscule level that we haven't really pushed the envelope with this, but I do
Right.
think it's going to come, it's going to happen. I think between AI and diagnoses and being able to come up with some genetic component, identify a gene, and really work on that research, in the next couple of years, I do think that that's possible.
Right.
Scientists, but, given what we're hearing from a lot of the institutions that are doing this research, it's a realistic goal. And I think when we
Yeah.
have that, then you're talking about being able to do a blood test or some kind of marker, which changes the game.
Yes, it definitely does. It definitely does. What should a woman do when her symptoms are not being taken seriously?
I think going to a specialist, and really focusing on keeping a log because this is a strange disease. It doesn't happen all the time. You may think you're going crazy. And I remember that part. I remember being in excruciating pain. And then the next day, like, wait, it's not so bad. Was I imagining that? Because you kind of like doubt yourself. It's like, well,
Yeah.
maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe it's gone. Maybe I'm not going to have it anymore. Even though you've had it for
Right.
the last year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever.
Yeah.
Really, that log will help to see if it's cyclical, and that
Yeah.
really is the missing piece in this, that if you can track it and you know that, it's really gonna help, and the fact that it goes everywhere, it's not
Yeah.
gonna just be bad period pain because 'cause you're probably on
Y
birth control already if you had that.
I think that is such a major point because I remember what I used to do is I would keep a log in my calendar book, and then I would get one of those calendar books that, you could just write a little note, and then it had, like, the whole day where you could just write all the notes, and I would
Mhm.
that, and then I would keep track of, everything that changed. And then I would go to the doctor and I would have everything written down. And because you also forget, and then you also, like you said, am I imagining this? Well, it's not going to be, it's been okay today and yesterday, so maybe, it was just in my head or it's not as bad as I think, but then you go back onto that log that you're talking about and, it's not normal and
Mhm.
you're not imagining it. It's something serious.
And having that to reference because the doctors, if you end up with a specialist, especially for endo, it's really helpful. Even as far as, are you getting these symptoms once a month or twice a month? Well, that will give you an idea about which hormones may be problematic or what's triggering you
Yeah,
or what might not be great. And then when you go into that, talk about like fertility testing, it all ties together.
yeah,
This part of your body is the one of the most important parts of your body. And
right.
neglected, people focus on their heart, they do their blood work, cognition, brain,
Yeah,
physicality, but your hormonal system, and especially as a woman, like your whole reproductive system fuels everything for you.
yeah,
Everything. So really understanding the importance of that and doing your homework to figure out how you function is a big deal. I think it should be done and girls should understand it at an early age that they need to.
yeah, I agree. Now, how does, she advocate for herself in a medical system that may not be listening without feeling intimidated or dismissed all over again?
Hard. I mean, I think it depends on the problem. If you're healthy and you're in your 20s and you're just talking about preservation or understanding, go to a fertility specialist, whether
Right.
you want to get pregnant or not, because
Hmm.
those people understand why things look the way they do and they can run full hormonal panels with a better understanding than your GYN. And then from there, if you have problems going to those specialists, but it's hard with endo just because that it will show up different ways for everybody, so it's difficult to get that diagnosis.
I agree. And that's an important factor is that it may not show up the same. Like everybody's different. Will the body's going to react differently. So just because someone says, "Oh, I feel this way, and this way," you can't say, "Well, I don't have those symptoms." So and just like brush it off because everybody's different. Everyone's going to experience it differently, for sure.
Yeah, and having that pain tracker of when you had pain is really helpful, whether it's in your bladder or in your uterus or in your kidney or your liver, just having that timing of it is really helpful.
I agree. I agree. And for the listeners out there, I want you to pause here just for a moment. If you are listening to this conversation and it is making you think that your sister, your friend, someone you love who has been quietly suffering, please follow this episode, follow this podcast, and share this episode right now. These are conversations that help women feel less alone, that give them the language and the courage to ask better questions, seek real answers, and advocate for their own health. Now, let's talk about something that I think will generally surprise our audience. One of the most alarming statistics that I've come across is that it takes an average of 7 to 10 years for a woman to receive an endometriosis diagnosis. 7 to 10 years of pain, of being dismissed and not knowing. Now that blows my mind. Why does it still take that long in 2026? And what specifically needs to change to fix that problem?
It's really multifaceted. I do think that that is going to shorten dramatically now, especially with AI. I
Mhm.
do think that girls and women are going to be able to plug in some of their symptoms along with timing and be able to get pointed in the right direction. And that knowledge is going to be really helpful. So I do think that that number is going to go down and go down quickly. But there's still a lot of really important pieces that are missing. The research has not been done. So
Mhm.
coming up with your predisposition, coming up with a genetic marker. We don't have either of those things. We know they
Right.
exist. We're just trying
Mhm.
to figure it out and get the research done. It's not even the type of research, it's literally just getting it done. So at
Right.
this point, having the bodies to do that and come up with something to then be able to give a diagnosis quickly or come up with some kind of test that you can take to be able to get a diagnosis will happen in the next, hopefully, few years. But again, there's a failure at the education of physicians, there's a failure at the education of surgeons, there's a failure at the education of teachers and school nurses and gym teachers and girls, in health class. So it's difficult, but I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful too. I'm definitely hopeful. And beyond the diagnosis problem, what is funding for endometriosis research still so critically under prioritized?
Well, it's right. I mean, right now, anything is difficult. So getting money for research is just difficult. And it's not even political. It's hard. It's the environment. Everyone's focused on cost cutting. And, these grants are applied. You're applying with thousands of people.
Yeah.
So you're a needle in a haystack. And
Right.
and there's, with endo being misunderstood. Even
Mhm.
the way that endo starts is misunderstood. Some
Yeah.
people believe in retrograde menstruation, meaning like the cells will break free and, you will have your period, but somehow some of that tissue, that blood will end up getting back into your uterine cavity or your abdominal cavity at that point. But some
Yeah.
people don't believe this. Some people think that it starts a different way. And
Right.
it then creates this two schools of thought, and there's like a lot of arguing within the community and applying for grants depending on who's reviewing your grant and what they
Right.
think the real cause is, which seems ridiculous at this point, but that's what happens. If
Yeah.
they think that you're going for research because you think that endo starts a certain way and they don't think that way, your grant's denied. Or if you
Right.
don't fall into their bucket. And endo isn't still really acknowledged as a massive problem. So having that funding go to it has been a fight.
Yeah.
Luckily, that's changing. We are seeing acknowledgement of endometriosis, like Women's Health Week just happened, and the president did sign a declaration about Women's Health Week and the focus about women's causes and what needs to be addressed, and endometriosis was specifically listed. And meeting with senators, on health subcommittee and the House of Representatives, people realize it's a problem. So we just have to get everything to catch up to it.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, I want to ask you about something that I find generally remarkable about your advocacy work. Most people who care about the cause post about it, share it, raise awareness. You testified on Capitol Hill. You walked into the rooms full of legislators and made a personal case for why this matters. You continue to spend time in Washington, both in person and virtually, connecting with lawmakers to push the real funding and the real policy change. What happened inside of you that made you decide awareness was just not enough, that you personally need to take this fight all the way to the legislative level?
I don't I don't actually like being a public figure. It's
Mhm.
not really what I do. I am married to it, but it's not who I am. So
Right.
I'm a worker and my brain is always going a million miles an hour, and I'm a business
Yeah.
person by nature, and I was a political science major, so that's really kind of what I gravitate towards. I
Yeah.
don't gravitate towards social media and posting, and I just actually don't like it. I've never really done an interview about my personal life,
Right.
and I just don't feel the need. It's not really where I'm called to. And it took me a very long time to figure out what I was going to do. I knew,
Yeah.
I had kids and they were little, so I was busy and my husband was working all the time. So that was fun. I lived that life. But,
Yeah.
okay, now what?
Mhm.
And this fell in my lap. Obviously, I obviously had surgeries and I suffer with the disease, but I said, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll come join and I'll open the lab and we'll cut the ribbon and I'll give my speech about what happened to me. And I can do that all day long. But when we ended up having this opportunity to go to DC and we met with Dr. Oz, Dr. Fink, who's the Office of Women's Health, and a bunch of other people that are
Mhm.
providing a lot of this legislation right now. It took a turn, like, Endo ended up needing someone in that space that would have the time to be able to do that and knew the advocacy piece and kind of what that took, and,
Yeah.
you've done advocacy, it's business.
Right.
It's schmoozing, and it's all the things that I'm very familiar with, so I
Right.
know that part of it and just managing what it means long term, and it's all about business, really. It's very much run the same way. It's it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, as we were talking about, and starting relationships and maintaining relationships and educating people, and I just enjoyed it, I liked it, I was a political science major, so being in DC and being in, Capitol
Yeah.
Hill and in all the houses of representatives and going to those buildings every day. It's great.
Yeah.
I love
I love it. I love it. And it's so funny because it can make such a huge difference and bring such awareness, and people don't know how powerful it is, but just going and pushing for change it really is effective. People, I hear a lot of people saying, well, this should be this way and this should be that way, but they're not doing anything. And
Mhm.
it's amazing, like if you're proactive and you do something to bring awareness, how change can happen. I'm not saying it's gonna happen overnight, but it definitely can push the needle to in that direction. Now, what was it actually like walking into those rooms and making that case?
It's a very easy conversation because the good news is that, in 2025, 2026, people know what this is and they
Mhm.
know it's problematic and they know someone who has it.
Right.
So that's the good news. Those conversations aren't difficult. People still don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but they do know that it's something that affects a lot of people and it needs to be addressed. They need research funding, they need education, and the administration realizes that, at the top levels right now with NIH and HHS, like they all know that. So
Mm.
I do think the conversations within the Senate and the House are easier, Republican and Democrat.
Yeah.
Democrats obviously are easier because of funding and research for science. It's an easier conversation. They're all for it. But
Right.
Republicans as well, like their focus on rural health really pertains to this because you take that 7 to 10 year diagnosis and you move that over to a rural area in America, like they don't even have a hospital in some states that are
I know.
qualified to even do this surgery. So that is their focus. And those are huge gaps in women's health. And they do know that. So I think it is an easy conversation to have. And I've been really lucky that people want to help. We're just figuring out how we fit, because there's many different avenues within the government of
Right.
where you can kind of go for research funding or go for education funding. And it's interesting. I've definitely learned a lot, but it's
Yeah.
also really empowering. It's great. Like, DC is an amazing city. I love DC. And walking the halls, this is the house of the people for the people, and it is. Like, these are people that are accessible, and they're listening, and their staff is there, and that's what they're there for, and people
Right.
don't realize, like you were saying, it is you can do it. You
Yes.
can whether or not something comes from it right away, but it's made for that. That's what it's
Mm.
there for. So, it's not inaccessible.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Now, what would change for millions of women if Congress prioritized endometriosis, and research differently?
I think we could fast track, a lot of the research that needs to be done. I think
Hmm.
obviously education, awareness, campaigns, all of that, changing the medical school curriculum to include more would help. Coming up with certification for surgeons to be able
Yeah.
to do this type of surgery would be huge, and also getting the research caught up. And I think when you have like those things happen, and obviously changing surgical codes so different surgeries can be covered that are the proper surgeries for the woman. Because even though, someone fights for 10 years and gets their diagnosis and finds out they need this surgery, well, then they find out from their insurance company that they're not gonna cover it, or
Right.
they show that they have to go to a specialist because no other specialist exists within a 50-mile radius, and I mean, the levels and the hoops that you have to jump through are just it's
But
craziness, and it's a game, and they try to wait you out.
yes, they do. They do. It's crazy. And can you tell us about the Joel Foundation's support of Second Endometriosis Research Center at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory and why that research matters so much right now?
Sure. We actually made a donation through my private foundation. That's kind of what kickstarted everything, actually. They were opening the research center at Cold Spring, and it's the first research center dedicated to endometriosis in the United States. And at that time, I think it was actually the only lab dedicated to endo in the world. And
Yeah.
sadly, that's the case. But it is the case. They had to come up with a match. So they were given a grant, and we are now actively trying to come up with the money to match that so the lab can continue in perpetuity.
Right.
And my private foundation had made a donation at that time when they were first starting out to assist with that because we obviously have a tie. Cold Spring Harbors in New York, it's in Long Island. My husband's park, which he's very proud of, is located in Cold Spring Harbor.
Mhm.
And the lab, we would always go by the lab. I grew up in Long Island as well, in Centerport, which is right by Huntington, or Northport, really. And, Cold Spring Harbor Lab, everyone would tell you, like, that's where DNA was discovered, which they have set me straight. It's not where DNA was discovered, but long story to that. It's like it's very famous in Long Island, and it's the
Yeah.
science, like it's a basic science institute, and what comes out of there is incredible, and it's a perfect place because it's located near where my surgeon operates out of, which is in Lenox Hill, which is part of Northwell, which is really embedded in Long Island and New York, and now they're growing, they're everywhere, but all my doctors are now Lenox Hill and Northwell, and I still go back up to New York
Mhm.
because I think the standard of care is incredible when you go up
Yeah.
there. But, yeah, so that's kind of how we started. Obviously, I had the disease, which is really what started it, and then, that donation put me more in touch with the foundation and what they needed and if I wanted to help, and that started my journey, and here I am. Now they can't get rid of me.
I love it. I love it. Now you're doing some of the hardest advocacy work there is. Like you're fighting for a disease that has been underfunded and undertreated for generations. You're walking into rooms that were not designed to hear this conversation, and you're doing it while you're living with this disease yourself. So I want to ask you something important. What are your why are you so optimistic right now?
Well, I think a lot of other
Mhm.
diseases paved the way. And I think
Uh-huh.
the fact that we're coming in behind the 8 ball and it's 2026, a lot of the vehicles for this research have already been used and they've come up with answers and they've come up with, the genetic markers and all of that. So I think that being able to do it at this time is great. We're not figuring out how to fly the plane.
Right.
And that's really important. I think that once the funding comes in, it can be fast tracked. So
Yes.
I'm very hopeful because
Mm.
in this day and age, it can't remain the way it is for much longer. It just can't. There's
Yeah.
too much technology, there's too much information, and there's too many ways of figuring this out quickly.
Yeah.
We have so much more information now and just the ability to fast track even even pharma and the way that they come up with meds, like a lot of the things that they are using now for endo or that
Mhm.
they are trying to actually put into production for endo and do the research for are now being done by AI. So where you had a med that maybe they would be interested in starting to do the research and trials, which would take 6 years, 8 years, is now taking 18 months because of AI.
Right.
So it's incredible, and I think that that's why all of this is gonna end up going quickly.
I agree with you. Now, where are you seeing like real progress in the science, in the culture, and in the conversations that women are finally having aloud?
I think that the communities, online and the advocacy work is really paying off. I think they know that there's an education gap where you used to have to fight to even explain to people what it was. People now know
Hmm.
what and they realize that people do need to know about it or they recognize it in others. So I think
Right.
that's all. But, it's hard. It's still difficult. It's still grassroots. So
Hmm.
unless you really get something on a national level to kind of catapult this,
Yeah.
right now we're fighting the good fight, but it's too segmented. It's too small
Yeah.
scale.
I agree. Now, what gives you hope that there is actually changing?
I think with really the fact that a lot of these researchers now are focusing on endo and they're tying it into a lot of these other diseases that already have solutions or have identifying at least
Mhm.
components to them. So, now they know, even though we don't have a lot of answers about endo, now they understand how it exists, the way it
Yeah.
affects your body, and what it's doing. So they're now pinpointing the type of research that they need to do. And they are hopeful that there will be some identifying test, whether it be blood test or like we were saying, like an at-home test or something like that, sooner
Right.
than so, when the scientists are telling you that, they're seeing a lot of things that are similar to other things that they've seen, so they know the type of research they need to do, which I think helps.
I definitely think it helps. Now, you're a mother and you're fighting this fight with your daughters, future in mind. What do you hope is generally different for them?
Well, I now know that I will be on top of it because I know that they're probably genetically predisposed to have it and
Hmm.
they probably will. So, they're lucky because I got answers.
Right.
But, it's hard. I think that they just went through their health class and they don't talk about any of this.
No.
It's funny. I was telling my husband because my daughter came home from like the fifth grade talk and it was like a big
Yeah.
deal. They're all like so excited for this talk and it's not even a good, like, I don't even think it's that good, but they're all so excited for this talk and it's like 30 minutes. Like, what exactly do you cover in 30 minutes? Like, you need like a week. Like, what are you telling them in 30 minutes? But
Yeah.
they come home with like their little bag in case they get their period and like, they're all like giggling in the corner. But yeah, there's a lack of education with girls because these are the girls that are gonna realize that there's a problem pretty soon. They're in 5th
Yeah.
grade, and they're also all these girls are, like, developing and getting their periods so much earlier now than they used to.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
it's crazy, and it's terrible because God only knows what they're being exposed to that's
Yeah.
doing that. But,
Hmm.
it's they need this education now, not later.
Oh, I agree. And a
Mhm.
lot of times it's the food that we eat. It's
Yeah.
all the chemicals and preservatives and adjectives they put into the food. I think for years they put hormones in eggs and then
Yep.
milk. That's you do that and you're changing the whole composition of a young girl, and
Yep.
that's why they're getting their period at 8 years old when they should be getting it at
Terrifying.
12, and it's really scary and that's one thing, like, we could talk about on another show, but they really need to get strict on the on you go to another country, and most of the foods in the United States, they won't allow in other countries, they ban it, and there's a
It's
reason for
crazy.
that,
I
you
mean,
know?
think what you want about RFK, but, like, anyone that's a health nut is like, "Finally, red dye 40 is gonna be a thing of the past," like, because my kids know, I'm like, "What are you eating?" And they're like,
Yeah.
Zero 3, red dye 40, it's Skittles," like, whatever, but they're used to me being like, "Eat it," because, it's terrible for you, it's all carcinogenic, and it's like, you're gonna end
Exactly.
up all the inflammatory, the microplastics, that's,
Mhm.
every house in my house now. I'm like a crazy person.
No, I do the same thing, so very, very similar. When you
Yeah.
picture your daughter's generation talking about endometriosis and women's health, like, what does that world look like to you?
I do think that they're gonna have more answers. I think, look, with AI, who knows what their healthcare is gonna look like in
Yeah,
10 years, 15 years, how often are you really gonna have to see a doctor? I
yeah,
think that that's all going to change, why not? Like, insurance companies, it's so much cheaper for them. I can't imagine
yeah.
that all of this isn't going to be everyone it's gonna people are disposable now, and it's
Mhm.
just a change in the way that we live. So you can either fight it or you can figure out how to use it. And I do think that it can be used for good because I think that it's needed. I think education is needed and AI does that. And a lot of these platforms, these new health platforms, and then having the research catch up with it is only going to feed the ability to give diagnoses without having to go like in rural America, like run 50 miles somewhere or drive to a hospital or fly to a hospital. And you can at
Right.
least be able to harness all of this in one location. So I'm hopeful it will eventually be good and that healthcare is going to look very different for them. They're going to have more education and really be able to be their own advocate.
I agree. Now, what would you have to change in medicine and research funding and in policy and culture for that world to actually become real?
I think the research codes, I'm sorry, the surgical codes really need to
Mm.
be changed. So
Yeah.
currently, I mean, I unfortunately learned a lot about surgical codes, but
Mm.
the surgical codes fuel the way that insurance companies pay for
Yeah.
surgery and the classifications for diseases. So, they do have different codes now, like the diagnostic codes for endo have changed.
Uh,
Well, changed, they've been acknowledged, but
right.
the surgical codes haven't. So you have like 2 options. You can do an ablation, which is just
Hmm.
like cutting it off at the top, which that's like
Yeah.
having cancer in your body and just like kind of lopping off the top of it. It's not gonna help. It's
Exactly.
still gonna grow. It's still gonna be fueled by whatever is driving it. And,
Right.
so that until you approve the surgery that's going to actually go in and remove it and get clean margins and do all that, it's going to be difficult. You're always gonna have this battle, and it's gonna wear people down.
Yeah.
So, I think that that needs to change. That's one of the biggest things that needs to change, and when you change the surgical codes, you get more surgeons that wanna do this surgery, and when you have a specialty or subspecialty that you can be an endometriosis surgeon, and that's like a classification, and all of that then fuels money, and it fuels the ability for doctors to go into that specialty, and the acknowledgement that it's a specialty with formalized training and formalized understanding and education. So I do think that that is what needs to happen in order for all the other things to kind of fall into place.
I agree 100%. And what do you want your daughters to know right now about their bodies, their pain, and their absolute right to be heard?
Well, it's a different generation. So I think that that's good. The way that they express themselves and the way that they feel entitled to express themselves
Yeah.
all day, every day is great. And, we're also, like, we're retrained, because I came from a different generation. Like, no one really
Yeah.
wanted to hear what I was saying.
Hmm.
Now, and that's the thing, like, my husband's a different generation, so he's like I'm like, "Can't say that." He's like, "Wait, what can't?" Like, "Can't say it." He's like, "Wait," but, it's like they don't realize. I'm like, "No, that
Yeah.
matters. Her feelings are valid." And he's like, "Yeah, but, like, do we
Hmm.
really have to hear it?" "Yes, we do. We have to give her, like, her because women," and I get on my, like, soapbox, and he's like, "Oh my god,"
Yeah.
like, it's a lot. It's a big difference. But yeah, it's really it is different. These girls realize that, like, they matter, and they realize, like, being kind and their bodies and all of that is something that they need to take seriously, and the way they put themselves out there in the world and, to say what they feel or how they're hurting or being kind to others. It's just their awareness of their
Yeah.
place in the world is it's so much more, apparent to them earlier. I didn't
Hmm.
no one told me that it really mattered what you thought, I'm sure you probably had kind of a similar.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah, it was different. I'm happy that they don't have that. They're not being silenced.
I
And then
am
those
too.
are the ones who are gonna be doctors, so I'm hopeful that when they become the doctors, they're gonna be better listeners and they're not going to tell people it's nothing.
And that's so important because I've been to so many doctors where it's a big difference when a doctor is a good listener versus doctor is just there and he's listening, but he's not really listening. And you
Mhm.
could tell the difference. At least I can.
100%. Yeah. It's definitely it's a tough world right now.
Yeah, it is. And I want to take a moment to talk about something that does not get discussed nearly as enough, the emotional weight of living with a chronic condition. Like people see the outside of someone's life and they assume everything is fine, but the chronic illness affects energy, relationships, identity, mental health, and the way a woman shows up for everything she loves. So, how has endometriosis shaped the way you think about your own body and your own health?
I realized that I need to understand more, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And I realized that doctors don't know everything. I
Mhm.
don't know everything. And I think that there's no pinpointing an exact answer. So just opening my eyes to try to do the best I can to understand how my body works. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for everybody, but I do think that it has helped me not do like what we were talking about, go to one doctor and
Right.
accept what they're saying to you. And, that's a good thing because I apply it everywhere. I know the answer that I want to get
Yep.
before I even walk in the door. And if they're not going to give it to me, okay, next, I'll find someone who will. So
Exactly.
I think that that good can come from it. And when you are living with a chronic disease, aside from all the terrible things that come from that, because it is debilitating and living life, it can be very difficult. Like just day by day, getting up, functioning, and
Mhm.
enjoying life can be sometimes impossible. But
Yeah.
you have to take everything and see what good can come from it. So it's either trying to make a change or being an advocate or
Mhm.
being your own advocate to get the answers that you need to get and not accepting
Yeah,
subpar answers.
I agree. I agree totally. Now, how do you balance advocacy, family, and taking care of yourself?
It's a lot. I think the advocacy part has been really busy. We have a private foundation as well. So I work with Endo Found, but we also have our private foundation. And the private foundation is based with, basically it started as music education. And then when I got involved, I blew it up to like everything basically. So we
Yeah.
still do music education at the core because that's what it was made for. But we also branch out into all these other things. So it's it's a lot and I love it all, but I also have we brought in someone full time that helps with the foundation and me personally, which has been huge because she's worked with in the nonprofit world forever and she's so
Yeah.
knowledgeable. So navigating a lot of that, the ins and outs with the foundation work and dealing with the education system because then with the private foundation we do a lot within the school system and dealing with the arts in schools and that's a whole other beast. So when you start to go into that world, you better know what you're doing. So that's been really great. It's been wonderful. I can't complain. I can't sit
Yeah.
around and do nothing all day. I have the things I love and the people I love and that's where I focus. And if it's not that, I don't focus on it anymore.
I love it. I love
Mhm.
it. And what would you say to the woman who feels guilty for needing rest, support, or answers?
It's hard because I've been there. I'm sure you've been there too with everything you went through. It's like if you don't fit into the box of what you think you're supposed to be doing or what people have led you to believe, you feel guilty.
Yeah.
And especially as a mom, that's even harder, or as a wife, and taking a nap during the day is like, God, she's napping. It's like, really? Like, you don't even know what was happening, but it is
Exactly.
difficult. And if you don't have help in your home, and it's impossible too.
Yeah.
So, constantly not feeling like a failure, I think is really important. Everyone has their own journey. I remember something happened, I forget what it was a long time ago, and I felt guilty because I was complaining, and I'm like, "Who am I to complain?" And, I'm so blessed in life, and, I really shouldn't ever complain about anything because I just have this incredible life, and someone stopped me, they were like, "Everyone has their stuff,
Yeah.
and no matter what, whether it's this person over here or you over here, and, everyone's entitled to have their stuff," and it's true,
Yeah.
you can't compare yourself to everyone and everything all the time. You have to just be kind to yourself and realize it's a journey and you're doing the best you can. And,
Yeah.
hopefully your family isn't going to be traumatized or ruined in the process, which is like as a mom, like goal every day. I'm like, don't ruin them, keep them alive. And like, that's really my goal. So I think realistic expectations is probably important.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there's nothing wrong with taking a nap in the middle of the day. Like, I think so many people get embarrassed, but when your body needs it, that rest, it needs it, and that's it.
Yes, and now I have my ring, so, like, I have my ring and I'm like, "I had a terrible night's sleep last night. I don't know why. I feel terrible today." But now I know, technology, right? Like, it's
How
great.
much deep sleep did you get? How much
I
regular sleep?
know. I'm like, last
No?
night I slept great. I could feel it today. I have to check.
Uh-huh. Now, let's make this as practical as possible for women listening. If she suspects something may be wrong, what should she do first?
I mean, really, it depends. If if you're talking about like a young girl and period pain,
Yeah.
yes, go to the doctor. Unfortunately, with young girls and period pain, usually it's here's some birth control.
Yeah.
So it's tough. Sometimes that will help with symptoms, but understanding that that's not going to help necessarily with the problem.
Right.
So if you have something that's underlying, while birth control may help with the symptoms or it may control your hormone levels or whatever's fueling it, understanding that there's something that's happening in your body that isn't necessarily normal. So,
Right.
as you're aging, really knowing that, hey, I don't function maybe the perfect way that I should be functioning and why and what does that look like? And
Right.
while you're a teenager, maybe you can't do that kind of testing or, you're
Yeah.
still your parents and all of that. But eventually keep that in the back of your mind because it's going to come up.
I agree. Now, what symptoms should she absolutely not accept as normal? If the period is one of them. Is there anything else that you think of?
Yeah, I mean, debilitating bleeding, debilitating pain, and being told that this is normal or having shame around it is not acceptable. And those tend to be the ones that really will come out in adolescence. I had like when I would get my period, it would be bad, but I would also have like throbbing down my legs or
Yeah.
what would feel like almost like a bladder infection every month because of all the inflammation and the nerve
Yeah.
pain. So none of those things are normal. Your period should be
Right.
something that happens, but you're able to live through it. And if you need to
Exactly.
stop your life because of it, that's a problem.
Right. I agree. And what is one thing that you want every woman to stop telling herself? The one thing she needs to stop, that she needs to stop accepting and start today.
I think really, I mean, I don't trusting that whatever a doctor tells you
Yeah.
may be the answer. And I think we're coming out of that mindset, but
Hmm.
there's still a lot of people that are in it. And if you don't feel good and you're
Yeah.
not getting answers, that's valid. And you
Right.
know way more about your body than any doctor that you're seeing, to be honest. So if you feel like
Exactly.
something is not accurate, keep going. Just keep going because you will get an answer eventually.
Yeah, I agree. And for the women listening right now who feels dismissed, confused, exhausted, and completely alone in this, what do you want her to hear today?
Everyone's working really hard and we know it exists because most of the people, especially at EndoFound, we've all lived with endometriosis and that's how
Yes.
we've ended up here. So even a lot of the researchers, we're all driven by compassion for everything that's happening. And we
Right.
know pain and the loneliness and feeling like you are subpar because you're not able to live your life on a daily basis or you don't know how you're going to feel. And it's not in your head and you're not a failure and hopefully change is coming sooner than later, but we all recognize it, and the EndoFound community is really great. Like, if you go on their socials and you follow even on Reddit, like, there's a lot of, like, subs up there, and it's really
Yeah.
incredible that people really embrace that community because there's not a lot of people that understand what you're going through. And we end up connecting a lot with people through the work, especially me, the work that I do
Yeah.
talk to people and, all the stories sound the same. Everyone has variations and levels of intensity and how extreme it was, but it is the same. And there are people. So So finding that community is really important also.
Yes, definitely. And before we go, can you tell people about the foundation and where they can find it?
Sure. The foundation is the Endometriosis Foundation of America, and it's endofound.org. We have socials. You can go to the website and find all the socials on there also. You can donate, you can follow us, get our newsletter, and or volunteer. So all the options are there. And we really lean on the volunteers a lot. So if you have time, absolutely come on over.
I love it. I love it. And for the listeners out there, endometriosis is not just a women's health issue. It's a quality of life issue, a research issue, a funding issue, a legislative issue, and all the above. It's a human issue. No woman should have to wait 7 to 10 years for answers. No woman should have to minimize her pain to make others comfortable. And no woman should have to fight alone to be believed. Alexis Roderick Jones is talking that fight everywhere it needs to go from the doctor's office to Capitol Hill. And she is doing it because she knows firsthand what it costs a woman not to be heard. Alexis, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. First of all, it's an honor to have you on the show. And also, it's not always easy to share our stories with people. And I think sometimes people don't realize, there's a lot of emotions that come with these stories, and sometimes those emotions come to the surface as we revamp the story and we tell others. And I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for doing what you're doing, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Stacey, and same to you. I mean, you're having a podcast that bring all these people in to talk about these subjects, and it's so important. So everything you're doing too, it really helps the community and women, and everything that we have to live with. Finding people that sound like you is really important, whatever journey it is that you're going through.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and thank you so much for being on the show. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'd love for you to come back and we can discuss more about maybe the emotions that come with this and more about taking care of your health and how that also affects it as well.
Absolutely. Let me know. We will be in touch.
All right, sounds great. You have a
All
great
right.
day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye bye.